I was transferring another $25,000 to cover my parents' mortgage when the text arrived in our family group chat. Dad's message was brutally simple. "We've decided you should step away for now." No explanation. No gratitude for 3 years of keeping them afloat. Just cold dismissal. Within seconds, my sister Sarah liked the message and added a party emoji. My hands trembled as I stared at my phone screen, the bank transfer confirmation still glowing beneath Dad's words. After everything I'd sacrificed, every dollar I'd given, every sleepless night, worrying about their financial survival, this was how they chose to repay me. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. 3 years ago, my parents Robert and Linda came to me with tears in their eyes and foreclosure notices in their hands. Dad had worked at the steel factory for 32 years before it closed, and Mom's part-time job at Target barely covered groceries. Their house, the same 4-bedroom colonial where I'd grown up shooting baskets in the driveway, was 90 days from auction. I remember sitting at their kitchen table, looking at the stack of bills spread across the surface like playing cards in a losing hand. Dad's pride was shattered as he explained how they'd fallen behind after his unemployment benefits ran out. Mom clutched tissues, apologizing over and over for asking their son to rescue them. My tech consulting business had exploded that year. Corporate clients were paying premium rates for cybersecurity assessments, and I'd landed contracts with 3 Fortune 500 companies. Success felt surreal after years of ramen dinners and shared apartments, but seeing my parents' desperation made every achievement feel hollow. "We'll pay you back," Dad promised, his voice thick with shame. "Once I find steady work, once things turn around." I didn't hesitate. That first payment was $47,000, enough to bring their mortgage current and cover 6 months of payments. The relief on their faces made every penny worth it. But the requests didn't stop there. Sarah called 2 months later, sobbing about her student loans. $28,000 in debt from her marketing degree, with interest rates climbing toward double digits. She'd been making minimum payments for 7 years, watching the balance grow instead of shrink. "I can't breathe under this weight, Johnny," she cried. "Every month it gets worse. I'll never be free." I paid off her loans entirely. Another $28,000 from my business account wiped clean in one electronic transfer. Sarah's gratitude felt genuine then. She sent flowers to my office with a card reading, "Thank you for giving me my life back." Marcus came next. My younger brother with calloused hands and bigger dreams than his construction job could support. He wanted to start his own contracting business, had clients lined up and equipment identified, but no bank would touch him without collateral. "Just $15,000 to get started," he explained, showing me his business plan on crumpled notebook paper. "I'll pay you back within 2 years, I swear on Mom's grave." Mom was very much alive, but I understood his sincerity. Marcus had always been the worker among us, the one who fixed everything that broke and never asked for recognition. His plan was solid. His work ethic unquestionable. I transferred the money that afternoon. Month after month, the requests continued. Dad needed a new transmission for his truck to keep looking for work. Mom required dental surgery that insurance wouldn't cover. Sarah's apartment needed a security deposit when her landlord raised the rent. Marcus hit unexpected supply chain delays and needed materials money. I kept detailed records of everything, spreadsheets tracking every dollar, every conversation, every promise of eventual repayment. My accountant Paul warned me about lending to family, but I believed in them. They were my blood, my foundation, my reason for working 18-hour days building something bigger than myself. Now, staring at that dismissive text message, I opened my banking app and scrolled through 3 years of family support. The total made my stomach drop: $295,372.46. Nearly $300,000 of my life's work, given freely based on promises and trust. But something else caught my attention as I reviewed the recent transactions. 3 weeks ago, Dad had opened a new savings account. The initial deposit showed $50,000 from an unknown source. My father had money. Real money. Yet he'd still accepted my $25,000 mortgage payment just this morning. I called the bank, spoke with my usual representative Jennifer, and confirmed the details. The deposit was legitimate, processed through their main branch downtown. Dad had walked in with a cashier's check and opened the account personally. My family had money but continued taking mine while planning my dismissal. The betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore. It was calculated, deliberate, and documented in black and white across my computer screen. Sarah answered my call on the second ring, her voice bright with an artificial cheerfulness that made my skin crawl. "Hey, Johnny, what's up?" "What's up?" I repeated, struggling to keep my voice level. "You liked Dad's message about me stepping away, then added a party emoji. I think I deserve an explanation." Her pause stretched long enough for me to hear music playing in the background. She was clearly somewhere social, probably celebrating already. "Look, we've all been talking, and honestly, this needed to happen," she said finally. "You've been getting way too controlling about money, making everyone feel guilty and uncomfortable." "Controlling, Sarah? I've given you nearly $30,000. I've kept Mom and Dad's house out of foreclosure. I've funded Marcus's entire business startup. How is that controlling, spy? See right there." Her voice sharpened with practiced accusations. "You're throwing numbers around like weapons. Every conversation becomes about how much you've given and what we owe you. It's exhausting." I pulled up our text history, scrolling through months of conversations. Sarah showed me one time I demanded payment. One message where I pressured anyone for money back. "It's not what you say, it's how you say it, and how you make us feel." Derek noticed it too. Derek, her pharmaceutical sales boyfriend who drove a BMW and lived in a downtown loft. The man who'd never needed family support because his trust fund covered life's inconveniences. "Derek has opinions about my relationship with my family. Yeah. He's objective, Johnny. He sees how you operate, how you use money to control situations and make people dependent on you. We've all talked about it." The word "all" hit like a physical blow. Who is all, Sarah? Another pause. Music thumped in the background, voices laughing and chattering. She was at a bar or restaurant discussing my family exile over appetizers and cocktails. "Mom, Dad, Marcus, and me. We've been having conversations for months about setting boundaries with you, about how to handle the money situation without letting it destroy our family relationships. Conversations I wasn't invited to. Because you're the problem being discussed, Johnny. You can't be part of the solution if you're the cause." My hands clenched around the phone. "What conversations? Where, when?" Sarah's voice turned defensive. "Different times, different places. Sometimes at Mom and Dad's house, sometimes when Marcus and I meet for lunch. Derek's been really helpful, providing perspective from outside the family dynamics." "So you've been building a case against me?" "We've been protecting ourselves from financial manipulation. There's a difference." I nearly threw the phone across the room. Financial manipulation. "Sarah, I gave you everything you asked for. I never demanded anything in return except basic respect and occasional updates on how things were going. Those updates felt like interrogations. Every month you'd want progress reports on Marcus's business, or you'd ask Dad about job interviews, or you'd check in about our spending choices. It felt like surveillance. I wanted to know my family was okay. I cared about the money because I cared about you. Money always comes with strings, Johnny. Always. And your strings were getting tighter every month." I thought about our last conversation 2 weeks ago. I'd asked how her new job was going and whether the marketing coordinator position was meeting her expectations. Apparently, that constituted surveillance. "Sarah, there's something else I need to ask you about. Mom and Dad received money recently. A lot of money. Did you know about that? See." Her silence stretched too long again. When she spoke, her voice was smaller, caught. "I don't know what you're talking about." "A $50,000 deposit. 3 weeks ago. Right around the time you all decided I should step away." "Johnny, I really don't. It was inheritance money, wasn't it, from Great Aunt Dolores?" The sharp intake of breath told me everything. How did you find out about that? So you knew. You all knew Mom and Dad inherited money, but you let me keep paying their mortgage anyway. It's complicated, Johnny. That money, it's not really theirs to spend freely. There were conditions, requirements. Aunt Dolores had very specific instructions about how it should be used. What conditions? I can't. Look, you need to ask Mom and Dad about that. It's not my place to explain family financial matters. But it was your place to discuss my financial matters with Derek and plan my removal from the family. Sarah's voice turned cold, all pretense of sisterly affection evaporating. You know what, Johnny? Maybe this conversation is exactly why we made the right decision. You're being paranoid and aggressive, making accusations and demands. This is precisely the behavior we've been talking about. I'm asking questions about $295,000 and a secret inheritance. That's not paranoia, Sarah. That's basic accountability. And there it is again. You can't have a normal conversation without throwing that number around. Everything becomes about money with you. Because money is what's happening here. Money is why Dad texted me today. Money is why you're celebrating my dismissal with party emojis. I'm not doing this anymore, Johnny. I'm hanging up now. When you're ready to have a mature conversation without accusations and financial threats, maybe we can talk again. The line went dead. I sat in my home office surrounded by 3 years of family financial records, listening to the dial tone and wondering how helping people I loved had transformed me into their villain. But Sarah had revealed something crucial in her anger. Marcus. She'd mentioned Marcus being part of their conversations, part of their group decision-making. My younger brother, the one person I'd thought remained genuine in his gratitude, had apparently been discussing my removal too. I scrolled through my contacts and found Marcus's number. Time to learn just how deep this betrayal ran. Marcus answered on the 4th ring, his voice cautious and strained. Hey, Johnny, how's everything going? Not great, Marcus. I just got kicked out of the family via group text, and Sarah seems pretty happy about it. I'm hoping you can help me understand what's happening. His heavy sigh carried the weight of guilt and conflict. Man, I was hoping it wouldn't come to this. I tried to tell them we should all sit down together, have a real conversation. So you knew this was coming? Yeah, I knew, and I feel terrible about it, honestly. But Johnny, you have to understand the position everyone's been in. The pressure, the constant worry about disappointing you. I leaned back in my chair, trying to process his words. Marcus, when have I ever pressured you? When have I ever made you feel bad about the business loan? It's not direct pressure, it's the way you check in. The questions about revenue and expenses. The suggestions about how to improve operations. Sometimes it feels like you think I don't know how to run my own business. I ask questions because I care about your success, because I want the business to thrive. I know that's what you think you're doing. But from my perspective, it feels like supervision. Like you don't trust me to handle things without your oversight. My chest tightened with frustration and hurt. Marcus, I've never told you how to run your business. I've offered advice when you asked for it. I've celebrated every contract you've landed, every milestone you've hit. You've also kept very detailed records of every dollar you've given me. Very detailed records of our conversations about the business. Something in his tone made me pause. What do you mean, records of our conversations? Another long silence. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. Johnny, I need to tell you something, and you're going to be really angry, but I can't keep carrying this guilt. What guilt? For the past 6 months, I've been recording our phone calls. Not all of them, just the ones where we talked about money or the business. Mom and Dad asked me to do it. The words hit like a physical punch. You've been recording me. They said they needed documentation of how you were talking to us about financial matters. They said if things ever got legal, we'd need proof of the way you were treating the family. Legal? Marcus, what the hell are they talking about? I've never threatened anyone legally. I've never even mentioned contracts or formal agreements. I know, and that's why I feel so sick about this. Because when I listen back to those recordings, you don't sound controlling or manipulative. You sound like a brother who cares about his family and wants to help. But you made the recordings anyway. They're my parents, Johnny, and Sarah kept saying you were changing, becoming different since the business took off. She said rich people always end up looking down on their families using money as a weapon. I got scared that maybe I was missing something. Maybe I wasn't seeing clearly because I was grateful for your help. I stood up and paced to the window, looking out at the neighborhood where I'd grown up. 3 houses down, the Patterson family was having a barbecue, kids running through sprinklers while parents laughed over beer and hamburgers. Normal family interactions built on trust and affection instead of surveillance and betrayal. Marcus, do you believe what Sarah said? Do you think I've been using money to control you? No. His answer came quickly, firmly. I don't. And Jessica doesn't either. Jessica was his girlfriend, a nurse at the county hospital. I'd met her twice, both times at family gatherings. She seemed smart, observant, and genuinely caring toward Marcus. What does Jessica think about all this? She thinks our family is being ungrateful and manipulative. She's watched how hard you work, seen how much you've sacrificed for us. When I told her about the recordings, she was furious. Said I was betraying the one person in our family who actually showed love through actions instead of just words. But you made the recordings anyway. Yeah, I did, and I hate myself for it. But Johnny, there's more you need to know. My stomach dropped. More what? The business is doing really well. Better than I've told you. We've landed 3 major contracts in the past 4 months, and our profit margins are higher than I projected. I've been putting money aside, building up reserves, just like you suggested. That's great news, Marcus. Why would you hide that from me? Because Mom and Dad told me to. They said if the business was profitable, you'd expect immediate loan repayment, and they weren't ready for that conversation yet. They wanted me to keep the success quiet until they figured out their strategy for dealing with your financial involvement. Their strategy? They've been meeting with a lawyer, Johnny, a family law attorney named Patricia Morrison. They've been asking about gift versus loan distinctions, about what kind of documentation would be required to prove financial obligation. The room seemed to spin around me. They're trying to claim the money was gifts. That's what the lawyer explained as their best option. If there are no formal loan agreements, no signed documents with terms and interest rates, then legally it might be difficult to prove the money wasn't freely given. But we have text messages, emails, recorded conversations where they specifically promised repayment. Mom printed out all the electronic communications. The lawyer helped them identify messages that could be interpreted as you pressuring them for repayment or using financial leverage to influence family decisions. I thought about every conversation, every gentle inquiry about their situation. How many times had I asked Dad about his job search? How many times had I checked in with Mom about their monthly expenses? How many times had I offered business advice to Marcus or suggested Sarah consider budgeting strategies? All of it apparently had been reframed as evidence of financial abuse. Marcus, I need you to be completely honest with me. Do you think I've been abusive or controlling with money? No, absolutely not. You've been generous to a fault. You've put our needs ahead of your own financial security. You've never demanded anything except basic communication, and even that was always polite and caring. Then why are you participating in this? Why are you helping them build a case against me? His voice cracked with emotion. Because I'm weak, Johnny. Because when Mom cries and says she feels trapped by financial obligation, I don't know how to tell her she's wrong. Because when Dad talks about protecting the family's independence and dignity, I want to support that even though it doesn't make sense. Because Sarah makes it sound like standing up for you means betraying everyone else. But you just said you don't believe their accusations. I don't. But believing something and having the courage to act on that belief are different things. And I've been a coward. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of betrayal from every direction. Even Marcus, who admitted I'd done nothing wrong, had still participated in documenting evidence against me. Marcus, is there anything else I need to know? Any other secrets or strategies or recordings? There's one more thing, And this is going to hurt the most. Tell me. They've been in touch with some of your business contacts. Dad has been calling himself a consultant on your projects, telling people he taught you everything about client relations and business development. He's been positioning himself as your business mentor, taking credit for your success. The betrayal was complete now. Not only had they taken my money and planned my exile, they were actively undermining my professional reputation. Who has he contacted? I don't have names. Sarah might know more. But Johnny, you need to protect yourself. This isn't just about family dynamics anymore. They're coming after your business, your reputation, your livelihood. Why are you telling me this now? Why not earlier when you could have stopped it? Because Jessica finally made me realize that loyalty to family doesn't mean enabling their worst behaviors. She said if I really loved you, I'd tell you the truth and let you defend yourself. She said silence makes me complicit in their betrayal. Is Jessica there with you now? Yeah, she's been crying since we heard about the group text message. She wants to talk to you herself. Put her on. A moment later, Jessica's voice came through the phone, thick with tears and anger. Johnny. I am so sorry. I've watched Marcus struggle with this for months, and I've tried to convince him to tell you everything. Your family is wrong. What they're doing is cruel and manipulative, and you deserve so much better. Thank you for pushing him to tell me the truth. Marcus is a good man, but he's been raised to prioritize family loyalty over individual integrity. It's taken months for him to understand that sometimes those two things conflict, and when they do, integrity should win. Is he going to be okay breaking away from family pressure? He's going to be fine. Better than fine. He's finally ready to stand up for what's right instead of what's easy. And Johnny, yeah, we're both willing to help you fight this. Whatever you need, whatever evidence or testimony or support we can provide. Marcus owes you the truth, and I owe you respect for the way you've loved this family, even when they didn't deserve it. I hung up the phone feeling simultaneously devastated and hopeful. The betrayal was worse than I'd imagined, but I finally had allies who understood the truth. Marcus and Jessica were ready to stand with me against the rest of the family's manipulation. Now I needed to understand exactly what I was up against. I drove to my parents' house at 7:30 on Thursday evening, knowing they'd be finishing dinner and settling in for their nightly television routine. The neighborhood looked exactly as it had throughout my childhood. Sidewalks lined with maple trees, front yards hosting garden sprinklers, porch lights beginning to flicker on as sunset approached. Their driveway held Dad's pickup truck and Mom's sedan. Both vehicles I'd helped maintain over the years with insurance payments, repair bills, and registration fees. Even their transportation had been subsidized by my financial support. I knocked instead of using my key, a small acknowledgement that the family dynamics had shifted permanently. Dad answered, his expression shifting from surprise to defensive wariness when he saw my face. Johnny, we weren't expecting you. We need to talk, Dad, all of us. He stepped aside reluctantly, and I entered the living room where I'd spent countless holiday mornings, birthday celebrations, and family movie nights. Mom sat in her usual recliner remote control. In hand, her body language already closed off and protective. Before anyone says anything, I began settling onto the couch across from them. I need you to know I've spoken with Marcus and Sarah. I know about the inheritance money, the recordings, and the meetings with Patricia Morrison. Mom's face went pale, but Dad's expression hardened into something I'd never seen before. Not the warm working-class father who taught me to throw a football and fix a leaky faucet, but a calculating stranger who'd been planning my destruction for months. Since you already know everything, Dad said, his tone cold and formal. Let's skip the pretense. Yes, we've been documenting your behavior. Yes, we've consulted with an attorney about our options. And yes, we've decided your financial involvement in this family has become more harmful than helpful. Harmful, how exactly? Mom spoke for the first time, her voice shaking with practiced victimhood. Johnny, you have to understand how it feels to be constantly monitored and evaluated based on financial performance. Every conversation becomes a progress report. Every decision gets second-guessed. Every month we feel like employees instead of family members. When have I ever monitored or evaluated you? Dad pulled out a manila folder from the side table, thick with printed documents. We have records, Johnny. Text messages where you ask about Dad's job interviews. Emails where you offer suggestions about our spending habits. Phone conversations where you inquire about Marcus's business revenue. He spread the papers across the coffee table like evidence in a criminal trial. I recognized my own words excerpted and arranged to support their narrative. Those are conversations where I cared about your well-being and offered support. They're conversations where you used financial leverage to maintain control over family decisions. Mom said, "Look at this email from last March." She pointed to a printed message where I'd suggested Dad consider community college courses to update his skills for the modern job market. In context, it had been an encouraging response to his frustration about age discrimination. Isolated on paper, it looked condescending and demanding. I was trying to help Dad feel more confident in his job search. "You were telling a man with 32 years of work experience that he needed to go back to school," Dad replied. "You were implying that my skills and knowledge weren't adequate for today's workplace." "That's not what I meant, and you know it." "What you meant doesn't matter as much as how it made us feel," Mom said. "And we've felt increasingly uncomfortable with the power dynamic your money created in this family." I looked around the living room, noticing details I'd missed before. New furniture that I hadn't paid for, a large flat-screen television that hadn't been there last month, fresh paint on walls that had been scuffed and faded just weeks earlier. "You've been spending money recently." "We've made some purchases, yes," Dad said carefully. "With the inheritance money." "With money that belonged to us independently of your financial support, while still accepting my mortgage payments and emergency funds." Mom's face flushed with defensive anger. "That money came with obligations we didn't understand initially. Aunt Dolores had very specific instructions about how it should be used, and we've been working with the attorney to understand those requirements." "What obligations?" Dad and Mom exchanged a look that confirmed they'd rehearsed this conversation multiple times. Dolores wanted part of the inheritance to support family education and business development, Dad explained. She specifically mentioned helping younger family members build financial independence through skill development and entrepreneurship. So the money was meant to help Marcus and Sarah. Among others, yes. And you decided to use it for home improvements instead. We decided to stabilize our own financial situation first so we could be better positioned to help others from a place of strength rather than need. The logic was twisted, but carefully constructed. They'd taken inheritance money meant for family support, used it for personal expenses, and continued accepting my financial assistance under false pretenses. Did Aunt Dolores mention anything about me in her instructions? Another exchanged look, this one more uncomfortable. She had some concerns about enabling dependency rather than promoting independence, Mom said slowly. What kind of concerns? She felt that sometimes well-meaning family members could create unhealthy dynamics by providing too much financial support without appropriate boundaries. I stared at them both, understanding, finally dawning. Aunt Dolores specifically warned against my financial involvement with the family. She suggested that true family support meant helping people become self-sufficient rather than permanently dependent, Dad said. And you interpreted that as instructions to cut me out entirely. We interpreted it as wisdom about creating healthier family relationships. I pulled out my phone and showed them my banking app, scrolling through 3 years of transactions. This is $295,000, Dad. $300,000 of my savings, my business capital, my financial security. Money I gave based on your promises to pay it back. Money you gave freely without contracts or formal agreements, Mom replied. Money that legally constitutes gifts rather than loans. Because I trusted you, because you're my family. Because you wanted to control us, Dad said flatly. Because you enjoyed the power that money gave you over our decisions and our gratitude. The accusation hit like a physical slap. I never wanted power over anyone. I wanted my family to be safe and secure. Then why did you keep such detailed records? Mom asked. Why did you track every dollar, every conversation, every interaction if you weren't planning to use it as leverage someday? Because I'm a businessman. Because I keep records of all my financial transactions. Because you were building a case for future control, Dad countered. Because you knew that someday you'd want repayment, not just of money but of influence and authority within this family. I looked at these people who'd raised me, taught me values of honesty and integrity, shown me what family loyalty was supposed to mean. Now they sat across from me, reciting legal talking points designed to justify the unjustifiable. Do you actually believe what you're saying? Do you really think I've been trying to control you? Mom's eyes filled with tears that seemed genuine despite everything else being calculated. Johnny, I think you started with good intentions. But money changes people. Success changes people. And somewhere along the way, helping us became about feeling superior to us. I've never felt superior to anyone in this family. Then, why did you keep giving us money when we could have figured things out ourselves? Dad asked. Why didn't you let us struggle and grow and find our own solutions? Because you asked for help. Because you came to me with foreclosure notices and student loan statements and business plan proposals. Because we were weak, Mom said, and you enabled our weakness instead of helping us become strong. The conversation was insane, a complete inversion of reality wrapped in therapeutic language and legal justifications. But I could see they'd convinced themselves it was true. Months of meetings with Patricia Morrison and conversations with each other had created an alternative narrative where my generosity became manipulation and their ingratitude became self-preservation. What do you want from me now? I asked finally. We want you to respect our decision to establish financial independence, Dad said. We want you to stop tracking our spending and questioning our choices. We want you to let us rebuild our relationship with you based on love and respect, rather than financial obligation. And the money I've given you over 3 years, we consider that a generous gift from a successful son to his family, Mom said. We're grateful for your support during a difficult period, and we'll always appreciate your willingness to help when we needed it most. But you won't pay any of it back. We'll pay back what we're legally obligated to repay, Dad replied. Patricia has helped us understand what constitutes enforceable debt versus family support. So this is about money after all? This is about freedom, Mom said. Freedom from constant financial surveillance and judgment. Freedom to make our own decisions without worrying about disappointing our creditor son. I stood up looking around the living room one final time. These people had taken nearly $300,000 of my money, inherited additional funds they'd hidden from me. Secretly recorded my conversations, consulted with attorneys to avoid repayment, and convinced themselves they were the victims in this situation. I need you both to understand something. I said, my voice steady despite the heartbreak. I've never seen you as debtors or employees or anything other than my parents. I helped because I loved you, not because I wanted control. But if you need to believe I'm the villain in this story to justify what you've done, then we don't have anything left to discuss. Johnny, Mom started, but I held up my hand. I'll respect your decision to step away from my financial support, but I'll also protect myself and my business from any attempts to rewrite history or damage my reputation. Dad's expression turned harder. If you're threatening us, I'm not threatening anyone. I'm stating facts. I have records of every transaction, every conversation, every promise made about repayment. If you want to claim this money was gifts, we can let attorneys and judges decide what the evidence supports. We'd hoped this could remain a private family matter, Mom said. So did I. But you've already involved lawyers and made it legal. I'm just responding to the situation you created. I walked toward the front door, then turned back for one final exchange. The inheritance money. What did Aunt Dolores actually say about me? Mom and Dad looked at each other again, and this time the pause stretched long enough to reveal uncomfortable truth. She said you were a good man who deserved a grateful family, Mom admitted quietly. She said we should make sure you knew how much we appreciated your sacrifices. But she also said dependency could become toxic if not managed carefully. Dad added quickly. And you decided my appreciation was toxicity. We decided our gratitude was becoming obligation, and obligation was becoming resentment, Mom said. I nodded, understanding finally complete. Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, Dad. I hope someday you realize what you've lost. I drove home through streets that felt familiar and foreign, simultaneously knowing I'd never see my parents the same way again. But I also felt something unexpected alongside the heartbreak relief. For the first time in months, I knew exactly where I stood and exactly what I needed to do. Friday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching my emotional state as I sat in my home office surrounded by 3 years of financial records. My accountant Paul had arrived at 8:30 with coffee, and his laptop ready to help me organize the documentation that would either prove my case or confirm my family's legal advantages. Before we start, Paul said, settling into the chair across from my desk, I need to ask how you're holding up. This kind of family betrayal can be devastating, especially when money gets involved. I feel like I've been living in an alternate reality, I admitted. Everything I thought was love and support has been reinterpreted as control and manipulation. I don't even know which version is true anymore. That's exactly why we need documentation, Paul replied. Facts don't lie even when people do. Let's see what the numbers tell us about this situation. We spent the first hour organizing transactions chronologically, creating a comprehensive timeline of every dollar I'd given to family members. The pattern that emerged was clear and consistent requests for help, followed by grateful acceptance. Promises of repayment and months of regular communication about progress and challenges. Look at this email from your father, Paul said, pointing to a message from 18 months ago. Quote, Son, I can't thank you enough for the mortgage help. Linda and I will pay you back as soon as I find steady work. You've literally saved our home and our peace of mind. They'd probably say that was just gratitude, not acknowledgement of debt. Maybe, but look at this text from Marcus 3 weeks later. Paul scrolled to another document. Quote, Business is picking up faster than expected. Should be able to start repaying the loan within 6 months if this momentum continues. I read over dozens of similar messages, each one clearly treating my financial support as loans rather than gifts. The language was consistent across all family members: repayment, loan, debt, obligation. Never gift, donation, or charity. Paul, there's something else we need to investigate. My father has been contacting my business associates, claiming he taught me everything about client relations and business development. Paul looked up from his laptop, eyebrows raised. That could constitute business interference or defamation depending on what he's telling people. I need to know who he's contacted and what he's said. My reputation is everything in consulting. If clients start questioning my qualifications or thinking I'm not the actual brains behind my success, I could lose contracts. Do you have any idea which clients he might have approached? CPU. I thought back through recent interactions, looking for unusual questions or changed attitudes from business partners. Jennifer Cole at First National seemed surprised when I mentioned my family situation last month. She asked whether my father was involved in my cybersecurity assessments. At the time, I thought it was just small talk. Let's call Jennifer and ask directly. Professional relationships require honesty, and if your father has been misrepresenting himself, your clients deserve to know the truth. I dialed Jennifer's direct line, putting the call on speaker so Paul could hear both sides of the conversation. Johnny. Jennifer's voice was warm but slightly cautious. Good to hear from you. How are things going? Hi, Jennifer. I'm calling about something sensitive. Has my father contacted you or anyone at the bank about my consulting work? Faye. A pause. Actually, yes. He called about 3 weeks ago, introduced himself as Robert, your business mentor and advisor. He wanted to discuss your contract renewal and some concerns he had about your workload. My stomach dropped. What kind of concerns? He said he was worried you were taking on too many clients without adequate support systems. He suggested the bank might want to consider bringing him on as a secondary consultant to help manage the increased demand for your services. Jennifer, I need you to know that my father has never been involved in my business in any capacity. He's not a mentor, advisor, or consultant. He has no expertise in cybersecurity, no relevant education, and no knowledge of my work with your institution. Oh. Her voice shifted from casual to professional concern. That's very different from what he represented. He spoke about your business with considerable detail and authority. What kind of details? He mentioned specific clients' contract values and technical challenges you'd described to the family. He presented himself as someone deeply involved in your strategic planning and problem-solving processes. I felt sick. Dad had taken private family conversations about my work stress and transformed them into evidence of his business expertise. Jennifer, my father, has been estranged from the family recently due to financial disagreements. I believe his contact with you was an attempt to damage my professional reputation or insert himself into my business relationships inappropriately. I appreciate you clarifying the situation. Should I be concerned about the security of our business discussions if your father has been privy to confidential information? All confidential information remains secure. My father knows only general details I shared as family conversation, nothing specific about your institution's security protocols or assessments. Good. And Johnny, for what it's worth, your work speaks for itself. Regardless of family dynamics, your professional performance has been exemplary. After ending the call, Paul and I sat in silence for several minutes, processing the implications. Your father is actively sabotaging your business, Paul said finally. That's not family drama anymore. That's professional interference that could affect your livelihood. How many other clients might he have contacted? We need to find out, and we need to document everything for potential legal action. Paul opened a new spreadsheet and began listing my major clients and business partners. Call each one. Ask directly whether your father has made contact. Be honest about the situation without oversharing family details. The next 2 hours were humiliating and enlightening. Of my 8 major clients, Dad had contacted 5. His story remained consistent. He was my business mentor and advisor concerned about my workload and eager to provide additional support services. 2 clients had been intrigued enough to ask for his resume and references. One had actually scheduled a preliminary meeting to discuss his potential involvement before I called to correct the misunderstanding. He's been setting himself up as your business partner, Paul observed, not just taking credit for your success, but actually trying to profit from your client relationships, while simultaneously working with attorneys to avoid paying back the money I lent the family. That's beyond hypocrisy, Johnny. That's fraud. He's used private family information to misrepresent himself professionally while legally arguing that your family support was freely given gifts. I leaned back in my chair, overwhelmed by the scope of betrayal. Paul, I need to ask you something as both my accountant and my friend. Am I crazy? Is there any possibility that my family is right about me being controlling or manipulative? Paul closed his laptop and looked at me directly. Johnny, I've worked with you for 4 years. I've seen how you treat employees, clients, vendors, and service providers. You're demanding about quality and standards, but you're fair, generous, and respectful. You've never used money as a weapon or leverage tool in any business relationship. But with family, you've been too generous, too trusting, too willing to sacrifice your own financial security for their comfort. If anything, you've been naive about money and relationships, not manipulative. Then, why do I feel so guilty about fighting back? Because healthy people feel guilty when forced into conflict with people they love. Because you were raised to value family loyalty above self-preservation. Because admitting your parents are wrong means accepting that your foundational relationships were built on false assumptions. Paul reopened his laptop and pulled up a final document. But here's what the evidence shows, independent of emotions or family dynamics. You gave nearly $300,000 based on explicit promises of repayment. You maintained detailed records as any reasonable lender would. You asked for basic progress updates as any concerned family member would. And when they received independent funds, they continued accepting your money while planning your removal from the family. So what do I do now? You protect yourself. You document everything, and you make it clear that rewriting history comes with consequences. Paul handed me a business card. Amanda Russell. She's a business attorney who specializes in contract disputes and professional protection. I think you need to talk to her about your options. For the family money, for everything. The family money, the business interference, the potential defamation. Your father has crossed from personal betrayal into professional sabotage. That changes the entire situation. I looked at Amanda's card, understanding that calling her would mark a point of no return. Once attorneys became involved, family reconciliation became nearly impossible. Do you think there's any chance of working this out privately? Paul shook his head. Your parents have already lawyered up. Your father is actively damaging your business relationships, and your family has spent months building a case against you. The time for private resolution passed when they decided you were the enemy instead of their benefactor. What if I just walk away, let them keep the money and cut all ties? Then you lose $300,000. Your father continues interfering with your business, and they face no consequences for coordinated betrayal. That's not justice, Johnny. That's enabling. I picked up my phone and dialed Amanda Russell's number. Time to stop being the victim and start being the fighter my family had accused me of being. Amanda Russell's law office occupied the 15th floor of downtown's newest building, floor-to-ceiling windows offering views of the city where I'd built my business and lost my family. She was younger than I'd expected, probably early 40s, with sharp eyes and an authoritative presence that immediately inspired confidence. Paul briefed me on the basic situation, she said, gesturing for me to sit across from her polished conference table. Family financial disputes are always complicated, but yours has some unusual elements that work in your favor. Such as, Amanda opened a legal pad and began taking notes as we talked. First, the documentation is extensive and consistent. Most family loan disputes involve poor record-keeping and unclear agreements. You have 3 years of detailed communications clearly establishing debt relationships. But there are no formal contracts. Formal contracts aren't required for enforceable debt agreements. Intent acceptance and acknowledgement can be established through electronic communications, especially when the pattern is consistent over time. She pulled out copies of the documents Paul had sent her earlier. Look at this text from your sister. I promise to start paying you back next year when my salary increases. And this email from your brother, the business loan should be fully repaid within 18 months. These aren't thank you messages for gifts. They're acknowledgments of specific financial obligations. What about my parents' claim that family support automatically constitutes gifts? That's a common misunderstanding of family law. Courts distinguish between gifts and loans based on intent and behavior, not just relationship status. Your family consistently treated this money as loans until it became convenient to claim otherwise. Amanda reviewed several more documents, making notes and highlighting key passages. The inheritance situation strengthens your position significantly. They received substantial funds but continued accepting your support under false pretenses. That suggests deliberate deception rather than mere financial need. Can we prove they acted in bad faith? The timeline is compelling evidence. They inherited money 3 weeks before your father sent the dismissal text, but they accepted your mortgage payment that same morning. That pattern suggests intentional fraud rather than poor communication. She moved to the next issue. The business interference is actually more serious than the family loan dispute. Your father misrepresented himself to your clients, potentially damaged your professional relationships, and may have violated several laws related to business fraud. What kind of violations? Impersonation, false representation, business interference, and potentially defamation, depending on what he told your clients about your qualifications or character. Amanda pulled out another legal pad and began outlining strategy options. We have several approaches available, ranging from negotiated settlement to full litigation. The choice depends on your goals and risk tolerance. What are my realistic options? Option 1, formal demand letters to all family members requiring loan repayment within 90 days, with clear consequences for non-compliance. This often motivates settlement without court involvement. Option 2, civil lawsuit for debt recovery, business interference, and damages. More aggressive, but potentially more effective if they're determined to fight. Option 3, a combined approach starting with demands and escalating to litigation if necessary. What about the recordings Marcus made? Amanda smiled for the first time during our meeting. Those recordings actually help your case. If Marcus documented your conversations about loan repayment and business progress, he inadvertently created evidence supporting your position. Courts love audio documentation of debt acknowledgement. Even though the recordings were made without my knowledge, one-party consent laws in this state allow recording of conversations you're participating in. The recordings are legally admissible and substantiate your version of family financial agreements. She leaned forward, becoming more direct. Johnny, I need to ask what outcome you're hoping for. Full repayment? Partial settlement? Just stopping the business interference? Your goals will determine our strategy. I thought about the question, trying to separate emotional desires from practical objectives. I want acknowledgement that I acted in good faith, not manipulation or control. I want my business reputation protected from further interference. And I want fair repayment for the financial support I provided. Define fair repayment. Full repayment would be ideal, but I'd accept partial repayment if it came with genuine accountability and assurance that the business interference would stop. Amanda made more notes. Those are reasonable goals with strong legal foundation. Let me recommend a 3-phase approach. Phase 1, formal demand letters to all family members requiring response within 30 days. These letters will establish our legal position and give them opportunity to resolve matters privately. Phase 2, if they refuse reasonable settlement, we file civil lawsuit and seek temporary restraining order, preventing further business interference. Phase 3, full litigation for debt recovery and damages, including attorney fees and business losses caused by your father's interference. How long would this process take? Demand letters generate responses within weeks. If litigation becomes necessary, resolution typically takes 6 to 12 months depending on their cooperation level. And costs? Demand letters and initial legal work will run about $5,000. Full litigation could cost $25,000 to $50,000 depending on complexity and duration. Amanda closed her legal pad and looked at me directly. Before you decide anything, I want you to understand that legal action will permanently destroy any possibility of family reconciliation. Once we serve demand letters, your relationship with your parents and siblings will become adversarial in ways that may never heal. It's already adversarial. They've spent months building a case against me while accepting my money under false pretenses. True, but legal action makes the conflict public and official. Are you prepared for that finality? I thought about my parents' cold dismissal, Sarah's celebration emoji, the secret recordings, the business interference, and the calculated legal strategy they'd already implemented. They made it adversarial when they chose to betray rather than communicate. I'm just responding to the situation they created. Amanda nodded. Then let's protect your interests and hold them accountable for their choices. We spent the next hour crafting demand letters that were firm but professional, documenting the debt relationships and requiring response within 30 days. The letters to my parents demanded repayment of their mortgage assistance and emergency funds. The letter to Sarah required student loan repayment. Marcus's letter acknowledged his cooperation and offered reduced repayment terms in recognition of his honesty about the family's strategy. One final question, Amanda said as we prepared to conclude the meeting. Paul mentioned potential business damages from your father's client interference. Have you experienced any lost contracts or reduced business as a result? Not yet, but the damage to my professional reputation could affect future opportunities. Several clients now question my qualifications and business practices. We'll include business damages in our demand and seek compensation for reputational harm. Your father's actions constitute intentional interference with business relationships. Amanda handed me copies of the demand letters for review. Read these carefully tonight. If you're comfortable with the language and approach, I'll send them Monday morning via certified mail. What kind of responses should I expect? Shock, anger, defensive justifications, and possibly counter threats. Families don't expect accountability for financial betrayal, but whatever they say, don't respond directly. Forward all communications to me and let me handle the legal interactions. I left Amanda's office feeling empowered and terrified simultaneously. For 3 years, I'd been the family's financial savior. Now, I was about to become their legal adversary. But as I drove home through streets I'd traveled countless times visiting family members who'd apparently been plotting against me, I felt something stronger than fear. Determination. They'd chosen this path when they decided betrayal was easier than gratitude. Now they'd learn that actions have consequences even within families. The certified mail receipts arrived on Thursday afternoon, confirming that all 4 demand letters had been delivered and signed for. Amanda had warned me to expect responses within days, and she was right. My phone started ringing Friday morning at 6:45. Sarah called first, her voice shaking with rage and disbelief. "Johnny, what the hell is wrong with you? You sent us legal threats over family money." "I sent demand letters requesting repayment of documented loans," I replied calmly. "And I'm not discussing this directly. All communication needs to go through my attorney." "Your attorney? You hired a lawyer to sue your own family?" I hired a lawyer to protect myself from family members who've been plotting against me for months while taking my money under false pretenses." "We never plotted against you. We had conversations about setting healthy boundaries. You secretly recorded my phone calls, consulted with attorneys about avoiding repayment, and allowed Dad to interfere with my business relationships. That's not boundary setting, Sarah. That's coordinated betrayal." She hung up before I could give her Amanda's contact information. Dad called 20 minutes later. "You want to destroy this family over money?" His voice carried a fury I'd never heard before. "I want accountability for $300,000 and protection from business interference. If that destroys the family, the destruction started with your decisions, not mine." "We raised you better than this, Johnny. We taught you that family comes before money. You taught me that family members treat each other with honesty and respect. You've done neither. We'll fight this. Patricia says you don't have a legal leg to stand on. Then, you have nothing to worry about. But Dad, if you contact any more of my business clients, I'll seek criminal charges for business fraud. That's not a threat, that's a promise." He hung up too. Mom called that afternoon crying and pleading for a family meeting to resolve everything peacefully. "It's too late for family meetings, Mom. You had months to communicate honestly with me instead of building legal cases against me. We were trying to protect ourselves from financial pressure. You were trying to keep my money while avoiding accountability. There's a difference." Marcus called, last his voice heavy with exhaustion and regret. "Johnny, Jessica and I got your letter. We want to cooperate with repayment, but we need to talk about realistic timelines. Call Amanda Russell. Her number's on the letterhead. Work out payment terms that make sense for your business situation." "Are you okay? This whole thing has gotten so much uglier than anyone expected." "I'm better than I've been in months, finally fighting back instead of just absorbing betrayal." Marcus met with Amanda the following week and negotiated a repayment plan that acknowledged his honesty about family dynamics while establishing clear financial obligations. His cooperation stood in stark contrast to our parents' and Sarah's defensive hostility. The real breakthrough came 3 weeks later when Amanda called with unexpected news. "Remember that inheritance from Great-Aunt Dolores?" "Yeah, what about it?" "I hired a private investigator to research the inheritance details and we found something interesting. Dolores left a sealed letter with specific instructions about family financial support." "What kind of instructions?" "The letter specifically mentions you, Johnny. Dolores had heard about your financial help to the family, and she wanted to ensure you received recognition and partial reimbursement for your sacrifices." My hands went numb. "What do you mean?" $25,000 of the inheritance was designated as gratitude payment to you, with a personal letter explaining how much she appreciated your dedication to family welfare. My parents never mentioned that, because they never opened the sealed letter. It was marked as instructions for the inheritance executor, but your parents assumed it contained only legal formalities. Amanda arranged for us to meet with the estate attorney who'd handled Dolores's will. The letter written in my great-aunt's careful handwriting brought tears to my eyes. To my grandnephew Johnny, I've watched you sacrifice your own financial security to support family members in need. Your generosity and love have not gone unnoticed. This small token cannot repay your kindness, but I hope it demonstrates that some family members recognize and value your sacrifices. Continue being the man your parents raised you to be, even when they forget to appreciate who you've become. The estate attorney confirmed that my parents had legal obligation to distribute the designated funds, and that their failure to do so constituted breach of fiduciary duty as inheritance recipients. Armed with this new evidence, Amanda renegotiated from a position of overwhelming strength. My parents faced potential civil liability for inheritance mismanagement in addition to the original debt recovery lawsuit. The settlement agreement reached 4 months after the original demand letters required. Full repayment of mortgage assistance and emergency funds provided to my parents totaling $173,000 payable over 3 years with interest. Complete repayment of Sarah's student loan assistance, $28,000 due within 18 months. Formal written apology from my father, and cessation of all business interference with severe financial penalties for future violations. Transfer of the $25,000 designated by Aunt Dolores plus accumulated interest. My parents also faced the humiliation of explaining to extended family why they'd violated Dolores's final wishes and betrayed their own son's generosity. The most satisfying resolution came from Marcus and Jessica. They not only honored their repayment agreement but invited me to invest additional funds in expanding Marcus's construction business as a genuine partner rather than family benefactor. "We want you involved because you're smart and successful," Jessica explained during our first official business meeting. "Not because you're family, but because you're exactly the kind of partner who makes businesses thrive." Marcus had found his courage and integrity. Sarah had learned that choices have consequences. My parents had discovered that legal manipulation couldn't overcome documented evidence and community accountability. As for me, I learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable someone's worst behavior. Real family relationships require mutual respect, honesty, and appreciation. Blood relation without those qualities creates obligation, not love. The final twist came 6 months later when Sarah called to apologize, genuinely having discovered that Derek had been manipulating her resentment toward me to create opportunities for his own financial advancement. Her boyfriend had been planning to use her family connections and inside information about my business to launch a competing consulting firm. "I was so stupid, Johnny. So easily manipulated because I was jealous of your success and too proud to feel grateful for your help. We all make mistakes when we let other people define our reality instead of trusting our own experiences. Can we try to rebuild our relationship slowly with better boundaries and honest communication?" "I'd like that, Sarah. But it has to be based on who we actually are, not who we wish we were or who other people tell us we should be." Today, 2 years later, I have a stronger, smaller, but genuinely loving family. Marcus and Jessica are business partners and personal friends. Sarah and I maintain cautious but improving communication. My parents and I exchange holiday cards and occasional brief phone calls acknowledging each other's humanity while maintaining protective distance. I learned that true family loyalty sometimes means holding people accountable rather than enabling their mistakes. That generosity without boundaries becomes manipulation in reverse. That love without respect creates resentment rather than connection. Most importantly, I learned that my worth isn't determined by other people's gratitude or appreciation. Helping others feels good when it comes from strength rather than need. Choice rather than obligation, mutual respect rather than one-sided sacrifice. The $295,000 I recovered wasn't the real victory. The real victory was discovering that I'm strong enough to demand the respect I've always given others, wise enough to distinguish between family loyalty and family exploitation, and valuable enough to maintain relationships that honor rather than diminish my character. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is refusing to enable their worst impulses. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is holding people accountable for their choices. And sometimes family means building new relationships with people who appreciate your heart rather than just your wallet. Family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about mutual respect, honest communication, and shared values. The people who deserve your love are the ones who value your presence, appreciate your sacrifices, and treat your trust as the precious gift it truly is. What experiences have you had with family members who took your generosity for granted? How did you handle situations where helping others started feeling more like obligation than choice? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story resonated with your own experiences, please like this video and subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself in difficult family situations. Share this with someone who might need encouragement to set healthy boundaries with people they love. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that true strength sometimes means saying no to people who've forgotten how to say thank you.